All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Divine Realignment Podcast. My name is Julia Wesley. I'm a medium and a channel for my guides. And today I have my friend Maria Y. Cotter. She is an intuitive channel, a medium, and an energy healer. And we just wanted to talk today. Um, we have worked together a lot. I know her from the Lightworkers Lab, but I do know that she does her own work. She's a really gifted reader. And yeah, let's start talking about that. So, how are you, Maria?
Hi, good. Thank you. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. I thank you for wanting to be interviewed. Anytime anyone's like, yeah, I'll be on, I'm like, oh my God, cool. So, let's start with your spiritual awakening. How did you get into this?
I think it started with my childhood. I surely had this feeling of mysticism in my life. There was definitely things that moments where I easily could read emotions of people. I always knew what people felt feeling. I am very sensitive to when people put masks on, like when they say one thing, but I know what they're feeling. So
Mhm.
as a child, and even now, I am always getting confused
Yeah.
when so I could feel emotions,
Mhm.
which is clear sentence, and I could read thoughts, and they not like my own thoughts, but more of patterns. Like I would feel, and I knew what the person was thinking about. And as growing up in the Soviet Union time, when there was no spirituality in Russia at that time, now there is a wave and awakening, spiritual awakening all over the globe for sure, including Russia. But back then, we didn't talk about it. So I was silent observer. I kind of noted, observed, made a note of it. And most of those puzzles came together when I moved to the United States and I started exploring. There's so much more information and opportunity to learn available in United States. So I started reconnecting with people who are like-minded, and I
Mhm.
started learning since 2006. I am not stopping. It just feels like there is always a next stage. There's always more to learn about
Yeah.
spirituality.
Yeah. I feel you on that. It's always like as soon as you think you've got a handle on it, then you're like, it's like the curveball comes and you're like, oh, maybe I know nothing. News to
Good.
me. Um, so I actually didn't know that how long did you live in Russia?
I grew up there, so I went
Okay.
to school. I finished college, and I moved to
Oh,
United States in 2003 after college.
okay. So that's like a large part of your upbringing. So did you have to break any sort of like cultural conditioning in order for you to start coming into your spiritual side?
I'm not sure because my grandma, even though there wasn't a lot of talk about spirituality, like it's here, like as a knowledge, but there was very strong traditions that were passed from generations. Like my grandmother, my mom's mom, she taught me to read cards, and we used playing cards. And I
Oh.
remember she had a deck that was like very old, and supposed to use it for games. Obviously
Mhm.
that's only for readings, and she taught me how to do that. And she was like, hey, do you want me to read cards for you? I'm like, yes, please. So my grandmother introduced me into reading cards, and I picked it up right away, and it was very natural. And the funny thing is that nowadays I talk to my mom about it, and my mom said she had no idea her mother was doing any of it or knew any of it. She said, and I was thought maybe I'm a little bit losing my mind. So I went
Yeah.
to my journals. I flipped through my journals. I was keeping journals since as soon as I could write, I had journals. I'm like,
Mhm.
this is written over here, all of her spreads. She did.
Oh my gosh. I love that. And you always so I have a bunch of oracle cards, but I know that when people use tarot, if they don't have like a traditional tarot deck, they also use their paint their playing cards. And I'm always like, that's like next level skilled because I'm not great at tarot. But if you can use a deck of playing cards to get it across, I'm like, okay, there's something going on there. I think it's cool though that there's a family connection. So I know that you're connected with witchcraft. Like you
Yeah.
feel like a family line in that. Is that when you figured that out? When you're like, oh my God, my grandma.
I'm having a hard time with the terminology and the words.
Mhm.
Witchcraft is very traditional word for, let's say, the word magic, because, well, this is where I'm not sure what the words to find, because I feel like there's something new. So in 2006, I definitely was really drawn to witchcraft.
Mhm.
And I took classes taught by Lori Cabot, which is an official witch of Salem. She wrote many
Oh.
books, and I deep dive into that. I took classes, and if a lot of things that she taught us was feeling like I was remembering rather than learning.
Mhm.
Like I've had a natural ability to connect to the herbs. I know what herbs I need to put together for a certain purposes, for a specific intention without looking into book. I would go, it's very creative. It's like a painter who creates a painting without thinking of a color to choose to paint. Ocean comes naturally. So things like that will come in naturally to find. So I was really, that's why I'm like, I'm a little bit, I'm not sure about the word witchcraft, because I
Yeah.
feel more of drawn to nature, let's say herbs,
Okay.
nature, definitely elements. I would say, if out of all terminology, I feel closest to druids, this
Oh.
type of magic.
Mhm.
But also, I started exploring more Slavic gods and goddesses, and I'm deep diving into that because that's where my line and traditions are coming from. So at the time of this interview, as of today, I'm yet in another leap of spiritual development where I'm deep diving into my roots to find that out. But magic, I would say magic or witchcraft, or an ability to take the energy and transform it into and shape something out of it. And I would say most of us have this magic, because when a person designs an airplane, it begins as an idea, and then you work towards that
Mhm.
idea to build an airplane. With anything is like that, make it out of clay. And some may call it magic, but you can call it technology. So with witchcraft, I've noticed that you can, certain gods and goddesses or spirits, they do come in and they help you by bringing the items that you need or creating situations that are perfect in alignment. So as goes as magic, you put an intention. You may use certain herbs to cast a spell, to work the spell, but
Mhm.
then you wait and things magically begin to shape. But sometimes you really have to work for things. It's not like you
Yeah.
sit and do nothing. You actually have to go and you have to get what you want and do the work.
Mhm. I love how you said it was a process of remembering and not learning because I find that that's so true, especially when you do spiritual work. It's not as if it's like this is a completely new concept, you know? It's sometimes it's just like you're like, "Oh yeah, like that's right. I remember that." You know? Or it's just even if you don't like directly remember something, you're just like, "Yeah, that's right. That feels right." And that's how you approach like your herbalism and stuff?
Yes, and I would say that for like if somebody's spiritually awakening and there
Mhm.
are different paths, there are different techniques, and so much you can like. There's so much information, so many classes, you can very easily get lost.
Yeah.
But for someone who just starting up, that would be a really good way to figure out what's for you. It definitely does feel like I was remembering versus learning things in there.
That's a really great because it is so easy to get lost of all the stuff that you can learn when you first start doing that. So I like the advice of picking something that seems kind of familiar to you as like a good place to start because that's a really great practice of like tapping into your intuition and being like what's my best fit right now at least, you know? Um and you were talking about No, yeah, you were talking about connecting with the elements and with nature. And is that why you call your Facebook group Gaia's Sanctuary? Because you feel so connected to that?
I definitely feel a very strong connection to, I would say, Gaia or Mother Nature. Yes, because I do feel as humans, we definitely use so many resources. We take way too much from the planet. I'm really drawn to an idea of how people used to live, where the hunter gatherers, like when they had what was coming to them, they lived in harmony with nature. And I really appreciate what we have today in modern society. I mean, I'm happy not to go and fetch the water from the well. I'm happy to live in the house. But at the same time, it really breaks my heart to see how we use things for pretty, for money, for like we use so much disposal. So an idea is to draw that energy and restore that energy of Mother Nature, of Mother Gaia, to reconnect. And through my work, I've also noticed that we humans are, that's not through my work, but we humans are nature. So when we go and we like cover ourselves with ego and we want things, we disconnect with a part of who nature we are. An idea of having a Gaia sanctuary and doing work around that is helping people realign, reconnect, rebuild, because with that also comes health for the body. So the main work I do, and no matter what it is with my client, it is always about healing. If it's a mediumship, it is for a person who has a regret or maybe worries about someone who left, who their loved one crossed over. As a medium, I would connect with that person, and the person would come through. And a lot of my clients say they feel that person present, and they are able. There are different details that come through that it tells that it's there, but it brings healing for a person. And when with the Reiki, it is also healing and realigning and coming back to nature.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I'm 100% with you on that. If I give a reading, it has to be for the purpose of healing. It can't just be because, well, I wonder what this psychic will get. It's like, it's not what I'm here for. Like, we're here for healing. We're here for reconnecting. We're here for getting back to who we are. And I'm with you on that. And I think I hear you so much on how we abuse Gaia. And I think it's really tied to how we as a society like do not value the divine feminine, you know? And I see how, because all about like zero waste and very much about like sustainability, and I'm all about indoor plumbing. So I'm not suggesting that we go back to our roots, but I do think that we need to reconnect with like sustainability and not destroying what it is that we have, and honoring the things that creation has provided for us. And it's just like been coming up a lot for me recently, because I've really been trying to heal that aspect of myself of feeling, because as someone who's working and embodying the feminine in this lifetime as a woman, like you pick up on that stuff. It's just something that you're in tune with, about how like the way that we treat nature is the way that we treat women. Have you noticed that?
That's like a really big topic. I think that in my I've had in my personal life, I've had ups picks, like when I really was for faced with that issue of females not being treated well, for sure. But then it shifted personally for me in my own relationship with everything that I do.
Mhm.
So there is, I would say, there is a global thing about where a female stands for sure, and there is a personal one for anyone to fix, and that comes with realization of what you truly want for yourself,
Mm.
how, and having your own self-respect. And but I agree. Oh, that's a good question. I started thinking about it so much too, because to me
Ah,
nature is not just feminine, it is both.
yeah.
When it's definitely masculine and feminine, and there is a combination of the two, because you can't have because nature is like so abundant, it's so, it multiplies. This is
Mhm.
it's just, creates constantly, continuously. And you can see it when you walk on a pavement, and you can see the plants coming through the pavement, no matter how hard you want to pave it, the
Mhm.
roots and everything. The nature is in abundance. I do believe that the modern society wants you to believe there is scarcity. They want you to believe you have to go and hunt, and there is masculine energy. The world is definitely ruled by the males. We know that. It's not a
Mhm.
secret. It is for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But you don't have to put your own thoughts and your own energy into that idea. It doesn't mean you have to go out and, I mean, some people are born for that, to go out and be speakers for public and and be the voice for for a lot of people. But if you're not that, like I don't know, I don't consider myself as a big fighter for big groups of people. I'm on an individual level. I have one-on-one people, as well as I work on myself all the time. So
Mhm.
for yourself as an individual, you don't have to feed your thoughts and your energy into that
Yeah.
like in that idea, and then see how things will definitely shift, and one by one person shift their own thoughts will
Mhm.
globally affect everyone. The less power you give to that idea, and the power of a thought, Barbara Hancock talks a lot about it. I love that woman. It's just, you have to be so careful about what you think.
Yeah. No, I'm totally with you on that. I like, and this has really been coming up for me recently a lot, the idea that when you change your experience, is it helps shift the collective experience. And so we can't go out and personally liberate people because that's not our job, right? But if you can help one person come to the realization that they're in control of their reality, then that shifts everything. So no, I think that you're absolutely right on that. I totally agree. And I do like how you said that there's the divine masculine in nature as well, because it's all about that balance. And I do think that we forget that like nature is really about balance rather than just the divine feminine. And it,
Correct,
yeah.
yes. But if you look from a larger perspective, the sun is masculine energy, the moon is feminine, the earth itself, Gaia, is feminine
Mhm.
energy as well.
Yeah.
If you look at that, yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love it. That's a really cool perspective. And it's one that I actually personally forget a lot. That it requires, it's not just feminine energy that helps create. It's also you need the spark of the sun, and it's about harmony. That's really beautiful. So when you work with clients, is that sort of your goal, is to help them get back to nature, so to speak?
It depends on the person, depends on where they are at the moment of a reading. Like, I have different clients. Some are very spiritually awakened and then aware of the past lives, and that's when the past lives might come through, or a magical things might come through. And there are those who are more worried or concerned with the day-to-day or relationship. So it would be definitely guidance and healing. They would ask me, for an example, so I don't consider just some of the destructive things that might be happening as bad and it needs immediate fixing. For an example, if a person in a relationship where a person suffers, let's say a female client may be having a relationship in which she is struggling with a man.
Mhm.
I don't think that most of us want to immediately fix it. Like, I need to fix it. What I see a lot of times as a healing process is that is something sometimes, well, unless it's life threatening, obviously you have to immediately end it. But if it is not, there is a great lesson for you to learn in it. So I do think that is healing is not, it's also like recognizing and realizing and finding your own inner power to see that situation. Oh, I'm not a victim. Actually, I'm in this situation because I am getting stronger to step forward and see myself for who I am and know that I have voice. Like we females struggle a lot for sure in a male dominant relationships to where we feel like we don't have voice sometimes we're not able to speak. So if I have a client who is talking about the relationship and I can bring it up for her, let's say, and may make a suggestion of what healing would be in that situation.
Mhm.
And if it's body kind of issue, healing, I do believe that it comes from energetic levels, as you do as well. It's not only physical illness, there is something much deeper that comes with that. So a lot of time I can ask a spirit to show me what it is, why this kind of body issue or pains or aches, or what's the reason of that, and then we can work together on healing that.
Yeah. That is actually really close to the work I do. It is very much about helping people realize that they're not a victim, you know? And I specifically help people reclaim their inner authority by connecting them to their blueprint and helping them tap into it. Um, but that's really the basis of it, is realizing that you have never been a victim in your life, and you always had something that you were working on or that you were doing, and that even if you didn't realize it, you always had the opportunity to like heal the situation and shift it and change it. And I do think that that is really something. I know we're getting on like the divine feminine a lot, but I do think that that is something that women in particular have a hard time realizing, because we're so used to the perspective that we're powerless, and that's all it is just perspective.
But it's true also that man physically
Yes.
could be stronger. It's also on the physical level. Like, well, I have been in a abusive relationship in past personally to where a male was a threat and
Mhm.
I had to exit that relationship for sure. So there is, I understand that part. It could be a very scary because not just mental overpowering, but physical as well. But also, when we look at the situation, I would say when somebody is down or somebody is scared or angry, all of the emotions that we typically consider negative, I find them also like part of the healing process is to look at that emotion as well and see how wonderful that is. Like, see the be proud of it, or bring the gratitude. And let's say anger, let's take anger for an example. I'm like so angry. And then after you feel this outburst of anger, you feel so ashamed. And that, like, oh no, I'm not supposed to be feeling. So I think that part of the healing could be as well, like, look at the anger and love yourself with all the ins and outs, like all the variety of the emotions that you have, not feeling bad about them, but rather accept it as part of you. Because anger could be motivating, anger could be
Yeah.
moving. Anger is not always destructive, but when it is destructive, it's destroying the old, it's bringing up the new one.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
think especially like for us females, I would say, like, we're not supposed to feel angry.
Yeah, right.
You're supposed to be always
Yeah, exactly. That's not feminine.
happy
I'm
and healing.
But it is absolutely how you it's a really great way to enact change, because you're like, all right, I'm done with this. We're doing something different, even if it means I have to scream. And I also think that a process of like coming back into yourself and healing is finding things that you thought were weaknesses are actually strengths, you know? So it's like maybe I was taught that my gentleness is something that makes me vulnerable, or maybe I was taught that, my intelligence will never really keep me safe or anything like that. And as women, we're not necessarily always physically imposing, but we have other strengths that make us safe in our own way, because as as someone who embodies the divine feminine, like we'll never be able to I don't want to say win, but succeed in the way that men have the ability to in the society that we have set up. Would you agree with that?
Changing too.
Hmm.
It's shifting
Yeah.
here in the United States, where you see, uh, and also depends on what jobs you're looking for. Like,
That's
where do you
true.
want to
Yeah.
succeed, right? A
Yeah.
lot of those jobs where male taking higher positions are designed for males. I mean, not to sound terrifying for to listeners, but there is this like hunger for power. It is kind of masculine. It is masculine
Yeah.
for sure. And
Yeah.
I think that by thinking that we should be there, we should be in those positions, it's turning your female into masculine, kind of, because that particular, let's say, leadership maybe is a masculine origin nature. It's nothing wrong if a female wants to achieve that and she wants to have that kind of position,
Right.
but some of the jobs are created by males. Like, look at
Yeah.
I am the COVID situation. What's happening right now is kind of eye opening, for at least for me, but a lot of people in many different ways. I look at cities that with all of the skyscrapers filled with offices, people who are now working from home. Who created those jobs? What are those jobs for? Who? For what? Is it all like? I mean, I don't want to sound off the topic or talk about the topic that I'm not so strong, but I just
Go for
wonder
it.
sometimes about it.
Yeah.
What is going on? Like, all these people are going back and working from home, but it's like millions of people sat in the offices.
Yes.
What is that going on? What's
I
going
and
on
I
there?
I used to have one of those jobs where you worked in the skyscraper and you sat at your cubicle and you sat at the computer and then they move you home and you're like, wait a minute, why were we doing it that way when we could have just done it this way the whole time? And it's totally like capitalism. It's the idea that like time is money and effort and like pushing and movement. And it's not this idea that like things can just organically flow and that can be a natural way to work. I just thought
But
it
to,
was
an-
interesting.
to answer your question, I'm sorry for interrupting,
No,
is
no.
that in the modern world, in the current world, I don't see that the jobs that are created, all of those jobs, are awesome and amazing and driven for us. For some of
Mhm.
us, like, we are so
Yeah.
creative. The feminine energy is very creative, and we're just not being valued. We might want to shift, like, collectively to what is where value is. Like, for example, being a mother, we don't put as much value into that. Oh, we have to go and have to like be in that career oriented woman, and being home raising children is not as valued or appreciated or honored. Just the world itself, I think that
Yeah.
is arguable.
No, I totally agree with you. And then on top of that, if you want to be, a lot of times what happens is that if you want to be a mother and you still want to have your career, you're still the one like pulling double duty at home, you know?
Yes.
Like there's still this societal idea that it's mom who does most of the work. It's shifting though, which is like exciting for me because I'm like, I'm not doing this alone. You helped. You're going to continue to help when they're here. But yeah, no, I totally know. I know what you mean. I mean, my mom was a great mom, but she left the workforce to stay home with me and my brother until we hit maybe about like first grade. And then she went back into the workforce. But it was, people were very much like, what do you do? You're coming back to work? What do you know, like they didn't understand like the balance of it. But I definitely think that there needs to be more respect for things like motherhood. And then we need to take care of new mothers and we need to take care of babies. You know, I just think it's part of the whole thing. But I love how you speak on the topic because it seems very well grounded for you and it seems really integrated into what it is that like your daily life and just your daily spiritual practice. Did that take any work for you to get there or does that come kind of naturally to you?
A lot of work. It surely did a lot of work, but mostly for me to believe that I am worthy of happiness, to believe that I do not need to sacrifice, I do not need to I deserve to be happy. And that did take a lot of work. And just being in that place to like, oh, I deserve happiness. I don't have to suffer all the time. If
Yeah.
I need a break, it's okay to go ahead and take a break, to be sovereign. Lord Cabot, unofficial witch of Salem, she was the first one to tell me about sovereignty. She is also standing up for like female rights. She had her own history of if you are curious, there's plenty of information on Google about her life, but she was that empowering woman for me who said that she taught sovereignty, to stand up for herself and not to be able to afraid to speak up, and things will turn around for sure. And if a female is with a partner who was that dominant, and he's used to a female to be submissive and like, just okay, I'll do that, and then she would go and she would cry and she doesn't want to do it. Then when she starts awakening, it's going to be earth shaking. And that partner who was dominant, if anyone is listening in that situation, that's, I think, is important to know that partner, the masculine, he would want to do anything to make her stop. And if that happens, if he's not willing to see your own personal sovereignty, you just, like, every female deserve to be sovereign, deserve to be loved and appreciated and feel safe and feel free and be loved and loving.
Amen.
And if that partner doesn't accept her awakening and starts to put down and bring her down, it's time to leave. That's it. There is no fixing it. There's no need to change him. You're on. As soon as you have this click as a female, as a lady, as soon as you have this like mental click in your head, whether you stay with a partner and he turns with you or you leave him, don't worry, there's going to be another one who is in a perfect alignment with who you are as a new person. You'll be treated well. It's taken this personal power back, and it is work. It is not easy, but it's exciting and it's challenging. And as soon as you put, that's where witchcraft also comes through, because asking for spirit guides, asking for help, and now we all have spirit guides, then specific situation will align for you. Magic will happen. So I could share a magic story.
Yeah.
What I consider magic, and
Mm-hmm.
actually my own personal experience with the magic. So when that particular moment happened to me in my sovereignty, I started realizing that I don't need to suffer, that I started waking up and speaking up. Like our throat chakras, females really, we women really struggle with the throat chakras, because we're not allowed to, for hundreds of years, we're not allowed to talk. You can be hanged literally for talking. So now it's time to heal this throat chakra. The first bravery is to talk.
Right.
To say exactly what you feel.
Yeah.
So in my previous relationship, to where it was abusive relationship, I started speaking up. I'm like, no. I started standing up for myself, and he did not like it. He was trying to diminish me. So eventually we split, we left. And I was left on the street with nothing. I had friends who helped me. They took me over, but I did cast spells to ask for help. And about in 2 weeks, like I've seen also, I paid attention to the signs. I was looking at back then was a paper magazine with advertisements for apartments, and there was I was outside, and the dragonfly came out of nowhere, and she sat exactly on the apartment advertisement, which I got.
No way.
I got right away. So that's magic. You
Yeah.
put it out. Like, for those who are not practicing witchcraft, you don't need to know the details of ins and outs. If you're not drawn to it, totally fine. But the very basic, easy way is to put your intention, to have this, like, almost like when you have so angry, okay, I've had enough, that kind of energy, and you sit down and you write on the paper exactly what you want, because a lot of times we leave thinking about what we don't want, and we don't realize that we bring in what we don't want into our lives even more. So we need to know what we want, and that is when things will change for sure,
Yeah. Did you find
magically.
was it hard for you to figure out what you wanted, or at that point was it like crystal clear?
I think that probably lower cabin did help me a lot to figure out what I wanted,
Mhm.
because um, when you grow up in certain families, you sometimes see and you think, well, that's how it is. That's just how it is. And you don't become very ambitious, or you think that it should be differently. But eventually, when you see, oh, it could be differently. So I see myself for other women to be that eye opener and to be that strength and that power who tells you, no, you deserve, like, you deserve happiness. Yes, it's possible. It can happen for you, because when your eyes are closed, I don't know, you kind of just live in your routines and like, it's just how it's supposed to be, you know.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. It's very much when you don't have anything but one way of living modeled for you, it's hard to imagine any other way. You have to like deconstruct a story and then build a new one with what it is that you want. Um, that's like really fascinating. Do you find yourself working with women who've been in the same situation that you have been in?
Yes, and as we were taught, and I see it from a practice, we usually draw people with the same experiences. So I already went through certain things, and I see those, recognize those situations, and people like that drawn to me for healing, for advice, for healing.
Mhm. Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. And it's kind of nice and to have someone like you who's been through that same experience, and you can see that you look so very happy and healthy, and to have someone who's been like, yeah, I've been there, but then also I know how we get out of here. It's like having a nice little guidepost, and so that's really useful. Do you do anything specific? Do you have like a program or something that you do with these people who come to you, or is it just during readings that you find that this is what's most helpful?
I have a lot of friends who come and we talk, and then
Okay.
it's just readings as of today, because although I did have all those gifts since I was born, I didn't really tap into them and fully embrace them until recently. So that's when I started having switching my careers, we can say it that way. And that's when the whole shutdown happened with COVID. I do have two little children. They take priority right now. And
Right.
once they're back to school, I am working on creating the program, because I think being a spiritual coach is really excellent, and it is helping. But as of today, it is one-on-one sessions. However, I must say that I right now I do put a lot of time and into even a single reading. I would pre-channel, I would write things down, I would do the research. So it is a great value, and I make sure that we really touch upon that topic that client is interested in. It's not, as of today, for sure. I don't know how busy I might get later, but as of today, I'm definitely looking at all the ins and outs and a mix of the subject the client particular is interested in, and
Mhm.
the session doesn't concludes the solutions. It gave the tools. If somebody is a spiritual seeker, I give the books like, well, you might want to look into that, because myself, I love reading. I have a long list of books that I read, and I have my own book recommendation on my website as well. But right now it's one-on-one. However, like, one-on-one session is really deep as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. A one-on-one session can be transformative, really. It's like in that one-on-one session, and that one-in-one session. I know when I give a session, it's like I hold on to them. We do 50-minute sessions, and it's like I hold on to them and I hold them still. And then at the end of the 50 minutes, I'm like, okay, I said everything I had to say. Go out, be free. you know, and it's like clients oftentimes they'll come back to me and they'll be like, I got this validation, I got that validation, my life has changed, I switched jobs. And I'm like, oh my God, see? So it doesn't have to be this crazy program where it's so intensive and whatnot. Like a one-on-one session can actually sort of like transform your world. I know I've had sessions where a reader came to me and I had this amazing session when I was first learning mediumship. I had my mentor give one of her older students read for me, and she picked up on ancestors from like hundreds of years ago. She picked up on angels, what I'd be doing as my job, books I would be writing. And at the end of it, I was like, oh my God. And it sort of like changed the trajectory of my life, really, because it was that nudge I needed to change my life, and I think that if you go to a heart aligned practitioner is what you'll really get out of something like this. You know what I mean?
Life changing for sure. I have to agree. I myself had a few readings people read for me that changed so, and you have to write everything down
Oh
because
yeah.
it could be years before you can connect the dots.
Yes.
I have journals, and speaking of the journals, because things will pop up. Can I tell a story?
Absolutely.
Is that okay? So in what year was that? I think it was 2013. I have it written somewhere. I went to Lord Cabot she did a group session. She was talking about Summerland, which is the land of where souls go. So there's a lot about different ideas, what happens after we die. I'm talking about Lord Cabot specifically, and that is a Celtic tradition. So the Summerland, that's where all the dead go. She was talking about doing Samhain, which is around October 31st, which is known as Halloween. And then she was doing group reading. I went to Salem with my good witch friend, Cassie. I love her. And Lori Cabot was doing one of those readings to where someone comes in and then she was like, oh, there's someone for you. And she happened to pick me. And she said it was my grandfather, Ukrainian grandfather, with whom, because my grandfather and grandmother split. I didn't really know him that well. I met him a few times. I'm like, oh yeah, he's coming through. Oh, great. And she said, no, Lori Cabot said that he's saying that your magic is from his line and you need to reconnect with your Ukrainian family. And I'm like, I don't even know them that well, never met. And next thing you know, 7 years later, last September, this past September 2020, my half aunt connects with me and she starts telling me about all this magic, all this family line. So it's 7 years later, the reading made sense. So my grandfather said, go ahead, you need to talk to your family. I didn't do it.
Yeah.
She reached out to me. So things just build up, and I have so many of those stories. I've learned not to disregard any reading. In any reading, there is so much. Obviously, if you go to the one who's got this gift, who is not just doing it to trick you. And the great way to find out about it is like we have those broadcasts. I do free readings, so you get to know a person before you book it. There is a possibility, but the readings like that are absolutely amazing, and it's life changing, and it's hard to read for yourself. I've done it. You can do a little bit here and there, but you have to go to someone else. Even the spiritual people like ourselves, we don't see for ourselves. We cannot. It's just not possible to see because I think it's because we have our own built up egos, and that is kind of. Because I am Maria for sure. I am Maria, who is the mom, who is the wife, who is a friend, and I have this built up ego, and I just don't see some of the things for myself. I see for others. I love to read for people who I don't know anything about. That is the best readings. Even reading for friends, it's like, well, is this coming because I know you? Because it's really coming. So it gets confusing.
Yeah.
But for those who you don't know, it's like, and they get images, so much information. I I love doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I especially think that as a spiritual practitioner who's like doing this seriously, you can tell someone who is just doing it for like the likes and the money and someone who's doing it from like a heart-centered place is if the reader you're going to is still learning themselves. Like if you're still going to teachers and if you're still going out of your way to like read books and work with other, you're following a lineage of study. You know what I mean? And I think that for anyone out there who's trying to figure out, well, which psychic do I go or which medium should I go to? Like you can figure out, well, who feels good, tap into that intuition a little bit. And then if you're still having a hard time, do a little digging and figure out like who are their teachers. Because oftentimes you'll see that on their website or you'll follow them through like Instagram or Facebook and they'll talk about who they worked with before. And I personally, like, I find that really important. If I'm going to learn from someone, like in the spiritual respect, like, are you still learning or do you think you're done? Because if you think that you're done learning, like, we got a problem. And I probably shouldn't be learning from you or listening to you because we're constantly like works in progress, you know? So,
Yes, agree.
yeah.
And I would say that a lot different, like for me, when I pick a reader, for someone to read for me, I usually just know, okay, I gotta get a reading from that person. But
Yeah.
I'm very intuitive. But all of intuitive, but like once you work more with the intuition, you recognize, seeing and hearing this little gentle soft tapping on your shoulder, like Crystal and Compton loves to say, like your guides are so sensitive. They say to you, maybe you want to. So I've learned to recognize and jump on that opportunity. Like I
Yeah.
just learned to hear that little voice. But if you don't, if someone who is looking for a consultation with the intuitive, the great way to, like, sometimes I would just listen to podcasts and I would hear. That's how I learned about Trisha Carr.
Mm-hmm.
Or different readers could be good for different questions that you have. Like I know Tiffany and I know what she does. So when I wanted to know about my ancestry, I went to her and she gave me an amazing detailed reading about my ancestry. I loved it so much.
Amazing. Yeah. You know what's funny is that I don't really feel very connected to my ancestors. And I've tried. Like I've tried, so I'm also in study and I'm doing this year-long channeling program and we dedicated an entire month to ancestors. And we're going to get a little woo woo, folks. But as soon as I went into meditation to connect, there was this whole process of find a clearing or a meadow or a space, and then your ancestors will be there. I had just a bunch of aliens show up. And I'm like, hey guys, you're not who I'm looking for, but cool. Like, I could just never connect with any human ancestors. I think there's some stuff about that, about me not really having many human lifetimes or really any at all besides this one. And so the ancestors that I connect with are ones that are like still alive. And I for the most part find myself like working and healing ancestral line stuff that is like happening in real time, So do you have any advice for people who are kind of like having a hard time connecting into those roots or like connecting into their ancestry the way that you have?
I think for me also, it happened only after I talked to my aunt. Before that, they were coming to me. I just didn't know who they was. Like my great grandma, who was practicing a witch, she was a healer.
Yeah.
I never met her. My mom was pregnant with me when she visited her, but I've never met her. And now that I know about her through my aunt, a lot of readings that were done for me, it was her coming through. I just never met her. I didn't know who she was, but she was coming through. So now dots are being connected. And I also have to say, so those who passed away and your ancestors, they could be your guides. They come in, like also Trisha Carr talks about it, they come in shape and form that is familiar to you, that you would recognize. And you got to just keep writing down, I would say, journaling to reconnect with that. Also you will know. I think the one challenging part is nothing happens instantly, like immediately. It takes days, weeks, months, years in my case,
Yeah.
to reconnect with that. And I would say there is another very interesting thing that I'm entertaining this idea and deep diving into that, is that, and Barbara Hancock talks about it a lot, that Mother Gaia, the core of the earth, is, and the scientists proven that as well through the tests, systematic tests or experiments, whatever. I'm not a scientist. That the core of the earth is the iron crystal.
Yeah.
It's iron crystal. And she talks about, it makes sense to me, our blood has a lot of iron in it, and that's how we are connected to the earth itself. And that's where, from few sources I have heard, where our akashic records are. But my point is, I don't like, I'm starting thinking, is it my past lives? But I'm really huge into past lives. I love Dr. Brian Weiss. Loved it, loved it. But our past lives, is it the memories of our soul, which is commonly known, the soul reincarnates in different body, or is that memory of our ancestors, which is kind of new thought to me, because I have memories of my mom. There are certain memories that I have as mine, but I'm like, and there was a child. I'm not a grown up. This did not happen to me. When I opened to my mom and I talked to her, and she said, "Oh, that happened to me." Like, she was on a memory of on a lake, and I know the details. It's like a real vivid memory. I told her the details. It's a lake, there's sun, there's lily pads, and I'm in a boat, rowing boat, and there is a young male. She's like, "I was dating someone. It was long before I met your dad." And
Wow.
then memory of her being a child, like, also vivid memory, walking in a room, there's a desk left and right, and at the end, at the desk, is my grandma, but she's young. I said, "What is that?" And my mom said, "Oh, she was working as a secretary. It was me visiting her. She was typing, she was working there, and they came to visit her." So our blood actually already has so many memories of our ancestral line. So you are everything that your ancestors were, like all the generations, all of the memories. You have the key to that. But if you're really interested and curious in unlocking that, you can make that idea, you can think about it, you can meditate, you can write things down. It will, the information will come to you eventually. And like I said, the most difficult part is that we're limited in time and space, and things will come in increments, in small increments, and then you will connect them together.
Yeah.
And that will be it.
I love that advice. Thank you. And the journaling advice is such good advice. I can't tell you how often I will journal something and then I'll like accidentally come back to it, be like, "Oh, I forgot I wrote that down." And then what I did write down, I'm like, "Oh, it makes so much more sense now." So wholeheartedly agree with that. Even your dreams, like journal your dreams, just write down what you remember. Don't try to like psychoanalyze it immediately and then come back to it later and then be like, "Oh, now I get what that dream was about." I just had that happen to me. I had a dream because I'm always talking to my guides and I'm like, "Don't be cute with me. Like, you got to be literal. I'm a little stubborn. I'm a little slow. You got to be, you have to be clear." And they gave me this dream where it was so clear. Like someone was talking with someone and then right in the middle as it was getting good, she just kind of like got up and walked away. And the person she was talking to was like, "Where are you going?" And it took me forever to finally figure out what they were talking, but they were like, "This is you when you talk to us and we finally get something good going, and then you like get distracted by a butterfly." And I was like, "Oh, thank God I wrote that down." Because I wouldn't have remembered it otherwise. It was really just happened the other night, actually, when I was like, "Oh, I get it." But thank God I talked about it and I wrote it down, because otherwise I would have forgotten that important nugget of information.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty funny actually. It's my
But can I
guides.
just say, like, in terms of your spirit guides, as they all come as beings, as aliens. So I've had those readings before, and I've had my own experiences that we are also connected to other beings as well that are not just from Earth. However, we are on Earth, and we have to keep reminding ourselves that and our body is nature. Our body is earth. Is that your soul is not earth, but you are visiting earth. So you treat your body as part of the nature, and you're both. You're not just
Yeah.
cosmic being and soul, you're earth. You're embodying the earth in your beautiful form and shape. And we exist in many dimensions. We are, and the saying is, I am God. It comes makes sense because like when I do reading for highly awakened people, spiritual people, I see us as columns of light, and we exist, and it looks like a ray of light. I know for sure that it connects to the core of the earth, but even then it goes up. So it goes from
Mhm.
core to up, and that's different dimensions as well. So you can go, we're in 3D, and then there's a 4D, the portal, and so all kinds of things exist. And then there's a 5D, which is the light. So there is the light, the sound, the shape, the geometry, the things that we can. The reason I'm saying all of that, I don't remember the exact order, is that because the magician, or the real, like the reader, the spiritual practitioner, has a capacity to go either just to look at those dimensions and to see all those deeper energetic things that are affecting your physical body. You're taking, you're like occupying this physical body as a soul, but see where the soul, and the magician, the practitioner, is also able to work with soul on soul level, to talk to higher self, to like, hey, you really need to change because your
Yeah.
body is suffering.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's what you just said is so important, because especially when you're just getting into like spiritualism or the new age or the woo woo, and you like to like ascend way up into these upper chakras and forget about your lower chakras and how you're actually a human right now. So it's important that you be a human, and it is so important to remember that we're here for a reason. Like, you're not human on accident, like you're not just human until you die and then you can escape back to your spaceship and go home, like you're here for a reason. It's important, and to take care of yourself that way, absolutely. 100%. I actually find, I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of spiritual readers, they have a tendency to not feel so embodied and human. You know what I mean? And I think that they're people who have maybe fallen into the trap of, oh, being human sucks.
It's true. I also do believe it could be a phase of,
Yeah.
like, yeah, I feel like a lot of us go through that phase, like, oh, I'm not belonging here on earth, but you are earth.
Yeah.
Nature. I also hear that people say, oh, this life, like, when can I go back to being spiritual? But I love everything but earth. This is the place where you can experience so much, and a lot of
Mhm.
spirits would die for it. They want to be here. They want to
Yes.
taste food. They want to go in the sun, like have those physical experiences. And all of those physical experiences, as you have them today, are going to be passed to new generation, and they also your experiences for your own soul. Like, it's a very interesting concept of passing memories to a future generations, because I haven't really read a lot of literature about, but I can only go by my own experience having memories from my mom. Barbara Hancock talks a little bit about it. She touches upon that topic. She has some kind of therapist who worked with her on that, and then she mentioned something about that.
Mm.
Either way, love your life on earth is the way it is. Like,
Yeah.
it's you can make it enjoyable, not sufferable. For
Yes,
sure.
absolutely. And you have the power to make it something that
Yeah,
you enjoy. You're supposed to enjoy your life, And if you don't, you are the only one who has the power to change it.
exactly.
Yeah.
As soon as you have a thought that you want to change something, it means you probably will, unless you stuck in the pattern. So there are people
Yeah.
who are really stuck in the patterns, and
Mhm.
that's okay. I would see, and I would recognize it. I would say that not every single person in the planet is spiritually awakened or has a capacity to be awakened or goals or meant to be awakened. And that is fine too, because once you're spiritually awakened, you want to make sure, oh, I'm so happy. I want everyone to know it. How do you
Yeah.
not see? And that's okay. If one person doesn't see it, it's okay. If they think you're crazy, it's okay. They're
Yeah.
just not meant to see it. And
Yep.
that's like living in the comfort of knowing that is important, because you can go nuts. But this has happened to me. But this is how you can change your life. No, they are not there. They might never be there. Let them be. Let them live their life, even though they be unhappy. It's okay. Like
Yeah.
I've learned as a healer one thing: you don't have to fix everything. It's okay. If and it, not being judgmental as well, because what you
Mhm.
observe, or I observe, that some what I consider suffering might not be suffering, maybe just very natural state for that person, and that's okay too. I don't need to go and fix that, because there's nothing to be fixed, because that's a
Exactly.
natural state.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
okay. And who
There,
am I to decide what's
that's
good and
beautiful.
what's bad?
Yeah.
I can, if I only do reading for those people who like would come to me. I don't. I was time when I was advertising myself and it was picking up. I still want to go back and write articles, like little spells, like helpful things, and I want to be out there. I want people to know about me, but also anyone who's really truly drawing and ready, those will come for healing and the reading. But I will not go out and tell people what to do for sure.
Absolutely. And that's really beautiful. That, and from a soul level, you don't know what is suffering and what is, I mean, to you it might be suffering, but maybe they're getting something out of that. So it's really like you got to deal with that savior complex and think that everybody needs to be saved, because maybe they're getting something out of that looks like suffering to you because you don't need it, you know. um I think that is, I know that people in my life, I've heard them talk about, I just don't know how they live like that. And I do know that there have been people in my life where I'm like, I don't know how they live like that. I can't do that. And then you have to come to this realization that that's great. You don't have to understand, you know?
And you can see beauty in it too.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
not literally it's beautiful, but finding that comfort, like, well, that's how it is. Like you
Mhm.
don't, I can give you a hand to help you.
Yes.
But that's why I like, well, not that I like, but people truly would have to find their own healers. People, there's gonna be no healing. There's a zero healing if someone forces a patient to a doctor by a hand. The
Yes.
healing can only occur if the person make that decision, make that choice. Even talking to the dad, there was somebody asked me, how do you summon the spirits? I'm like, all right, well, that's the Russian tradition. Like, how do you summon the spirits? I'm like, I don't know. They come, but they
Yeah.
come because it did not, because I asked them to come. They only come that client made the intention to talk to their deceased loved one, and they ask, and then they bring spirit with them, and I'm a medium, literally medium. I tune in, I channel that, and I deliver information.
Hmm.
But you
Yeah.
can't force anyone. It has to be personal realization. The only thing that can force is some kind of a disaster that is out of hand.
Yes,
Someone
exactly.
else forces somebody, like that's your sign. Like
Hmm.
if your car breaks on the highway, well, that is your sign. You may have not wanted to go there or needed to be there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think just to sort of bring it back around to when you try and save someone, you sort of disempower them because you're removing them of the idea that they are the creator of their life. They are the master of their life, and they are so powerful that they have brought this to them for a reason. And so to you, it may seem like a hot mess, but to them, they're using it for a reason. And so when you disempower someone like that, you're actually doing more harm than good, really, and you really can. And I think sometimes we see this a lot in maybe family members or loved ones who we feel as if we're trying to get out of a situation that seems out of hand or dangerous, and they just won't, no matter what you do. They just keep going back to the situation. And there has to come a time where you have to be like, whatever I'm doing, it's not helping. So all I can do is be there for that person, you know? And there is actually so much empowerment that happens in that when you help someone realize that, okay, like I'm going to let you choose this. But if you want something different, I'm here for you. At least that's been my experience. Um, but I think that that's a really powerful sort of sentiment about personal power, to where even if something seems crazy to me, to someone else, there's such a powerful creator that it's meaningful to them, you know?
Agree.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we've been talking forever. And I had such a good
Love it.
time, but do you want to tell people where to find you and how they can work with you?
Sure. Thank you. So you can find me on my website, mariaycotter.com, and also Facebook and Instagram. Those are my two active social media accounts. It is also spelled Maria Y. Cotter for Instagram and Facebook. And the Gaia Sanctuary, I do have the group. You will find that information on my website. It's just longer to spell. But that's where I have a group, and that's where I go live to do group readings every other week, and that's free. And anybody can share their thoughts or ask for guidance in that Facebook group.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Maria. I had such a good time. I hope we can do this again sometime.
Thank you. I
Thank
really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for wanting to be on. And thank you so much for watching, everyone. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.